of the water sector program. My name is Tracy Watts, and I am the director of the Office of Community Development Local Government Assistance. Our office is administering the water sector program in conjunction with the Office of Facility Planning and Control. The working panel for the program is made up of representatives from our office, Office of Facility Planning and Control, the Commissioner's Office, as well as the Louisiana Department of Health and the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. I'm going to share my screen so that we can go ahead and start the presentation. Okay, today we're going to be talking about the source of funds, the guidelines for round 2 of the water sector program, the application submittal process that you're going to use to submit your application, and the forms that are in the application online portal. Just a few general notes as we get started. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website as well as the online portal website where applications are to be submitted. During the webinar, please enter any questions in the Q&A. If you have questions after our presentation today, you can email them to wspinfo@la.gov. FAQs will be posted on the Water Sector Program online portal. The FAQs will be updated as needed throughout the application process. This is a list of guidance that is relevant to the Water Sector Program. The U.S. Treasury published the final rule for the state and local fiscal recovery funds on January 27th of 2022. There are also FAQs on the U.S. Treasury website that you may want to review. For state guidance, you can review Act 410 of the 2021 regular session of the Louisiana Legislature. And in the 2022 regular session, SB 48 was passed and sent to the governor for signature. This bill contains specific program information for the water sector program. Then there were 2 bills regarding appropriations for the funds, Act 167 and 199. And then finally, the round 2 guidelines that were approved by the Water Sector Commission on June 2nd of 2022. These are some dates that were included in the guidelines. June 8th, which obviously we're past now at this point. Our office conducted a webinar to discuss the requirements of when you're using federal funds to hire for professional services. That webinar was recorded and is available on our website for your viewing. We are also holding weekly virtual Q&A sessions on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. for 1 hour. Our first was yesterday, and we will hold 2 more for the next 2 weeks. If you have any questions regarding the procurement of professional services when using federal funds for the water sector program, you can log in, and we will be available during that hour to answer your questions. The link to get to that session is on our website as well. On June 16th, which is today, we're conducting our webinar to go over the program for round 2. The portal will be open July 15th of 2022 to August 31st of 2022 for applications. September 1st to October 28th, the working panel will begin reviewing applications and preparing funding recommendations that will be sent to the Water Sector Commission. We anticipate the Water Sector Commission approving the funding recommendations in November and sending those to the Joint Legislative Committee on Budget for their approval as well. And just to remember that all funds have to be obligated by December 31st of 2024. This is the responsibility of the state. And all funds must be expended by December 31st of 2026. Here are the definitions of the eligible applicants to the program. Public community water systems as well as community sewer systems are eligible applicants. It is also important to note that applicants must have a unique entity identifier number that was issued by the federal government and be actively registered in www.sam.gov. If you are actively registered, then you should have a UEI and it should be indicated in the system. This is a federal requirement when you are applying for or receiving federal funds. During the 2022 regular session, the Louisiana legislature allocated $450 million to the water sector program. The source of these funds is the state and local fiscal recovery funds that were provided to the state of Louisiana through the American Rescue Plan Act. The grant funding cap for the water sector program, a maximum of $5 million, is allowed per application with the following exceptions. Projects that involve consolidation of systems, you can aggregate those amounts based on $5 million for each system that is involved in the project. Therefore, if you are consolidating 3 systems down to 1 system, you could get $5 million for each system, so you could get up to $15 million for that type of a project. There is also the allowance for the Water Sector Commission to approve an exception to that cap if one system applied for funding that exceeded the $5 million cap and the Water Sector Commission made the recommendation to the JLCB, and then the JLCB approved that funding, there would be an allowance for that as well. Here's a list of the eligible activities for the program. The only change that was made from round 1 is that it was removed to do drainage projects. The determination by the commission was that there was such a need in water and sewer that there was not going to be enough funds to address drainage as well. Here is a list of ineligible activities that were included in the round 2 guidelines. These were the same as were approved in round 1. Again, development of new systems, refinancing of debt, or any systems that are owned by the federal government or new systems to foster growth would not be eligible to the program. These are some additional program requirements that need to be mentioned. As I've said before, all applicants must have a UEI number and be actively registered in SAM.gov. If an applicant is seeking fees for professional services, such as engineering fees, then the professional services firm must have been procured in accordance with federal regulations. Our office has conducted a webinar on June 8, 2022 regarding this subject, and it was recorded and is linked on our website, as I mentioned before. We are also holding the weekly virtual technical assistance sections over the next 2 weeks. If you need to log in, you can find that link on our website. And finally, any acquisition of real property that is taking place regarding your proposed projects must be in compliance with the Uniform Relocation Act. Acquisition of rights-of-ways or easements is included according to the federal regulations. This is a breakdown of the application process. Applications are going to be submitted via the online portal. Water applications are reviewed by LDH and sewer applications are reviewed by DEQ. Applications are going to be scored based on the documentation that is submitted. No additional information or documents can be submitted to the review panel unless the review panel has requested those documents from an applicant. Late applications will not be accepted. And again, no additional information should be submitted unless requested by a member of the working panel. This is a change that was made in the round 2 guidelines of the program. our office is required to provide funding recommendations to the Water Sector Commission in tiered groups based on the population of the water or sewer system that is included in the application. The population of the system is determined by multiplying 3 times the number of active services connections. If a system is only located in a municipality and there are no active service connections outside of the corporate limits of the municipality, then the system could use census data for the population determination. Each applicant or each list provided to the Water Sector Commission will contain the scores for each applicant and identify any applicants that are requesting a waiver of the match requirements. Documentation that is submitted in the portal to support the need for a match waiver will also be submitted to the Water Sector Commission for review. The 3 tiers of the populations that we will provide lists are less than 3,300, 3,301 up to 10,000, and then greater than 10,000. The Water Sector Program has a 25% match requirement. All grantees are required to pay for all engineering fees unless an approved waiver of the match has been given. No waivers are automatic, they must be requested. An applicant can request a waiver of the entire match or a reduction of the 25% match requirement. This is done in the application portal. You will answer your question yes or no whether you want to request a waiver, and then you will upload any supporting documentation as to why you would need a waiver. Final recommendations regarding the waiver or a reduction of the match requirement will be made by the Water Sector Commission to the JLCP. This is another addition to Round 2 guidelines. Systems that received funding in Round 1 are not eligible to receive funding in Round 2 unless they meet the following exceptions. Remember that we are identifying systems by PWSID numbers for water systems and agency interest numbers for sewer systems. If a system is applying to consolidate additional systems that were not included in the application approved for Round 1 funding, then that would be an eligible application. The second exception is, I'm going to read this specifically and then discuss it. The project that received funding for the amount or portion of the amount contained in Act number 485 of 2021 regular session of the legislature and did not submit an application for Round 1 or did not receive the full grant amount requested in the first round. There were projects funded in December of 2021 by the Water Sector Commission that were projects that were included in HB2 and moved into the Water Sector Program. These projects were not scored by the working panel or submitted for funding recommendations to the Water Sector Commission. If one of these grantees actually submitted an application to be scored in Round 1 that included additional items, projects, or costs that were not included in the December award and were not funded when applications were awarded in January, then the applicant could apply for the items that were not funded. Basically, we have to ensure that there is no duplication of award. If something was funded previously, then we will not provide additional funding in Round 2. Remember, we will be looking at PWSIDs for water projects and agency interest numbers for sewer projects. This is a list of the scoring criteria that will be used for the application review. We're going to go over these individually. The total points available for scoring is 115 points. One thing that you'll notice on the Round 2 guidelines is this time we separated out descriptions of the scoring criteria for sewer and water so that you can look at those individually. So for sewer, under project severity, you can get up to 40 points. They're looking at existing conditions, Compliance with federal and state laws and regulations will be considered. Verification of these existing conditions based on records of previously conducted field investigations will be reviewed, and a lower score could result due to the submittal of incomplete or inaccurate information. We encourage you to provide all of the information. Do not assume that because you're being reviewed by a regulatory agency that they have that information available. You need to submit all of the information that is applicable in your application to bring it to the attention of the reviewer. These are some items that will be considered when scoring. This is not an all-inclusive list, just some things for you to note. They're going to be looking at the economic characteristics of the area that the system is located, system inclusion on DEQ's significant non-compliance list, system receipt of compliance orders, notices, or unsatisfactory inspections, whether you have a lack of opportunity to consolidate with other systems to create a more sustainable system, the water quality of the facility that is receiving the stream, and the cost efficiency of the project. So for consolidation, this would be 2 or more existing systems going down into one larger system. The responsible consolidated system must own, operate, and maintain all other systems post-consolidation. And a score is calculated in consideration of the average daily flow of the outfalls that are eliminated by the consolidation. You can get up to 20 points for consolidation. For resiliency, we're going to be looking for the completion of a resiliency plan that includes local standards or guidelines that can be applied to the sewer system and to increase the resiliency of the system. You should include descriptions of extreme weather events and the effect of the water and the wind damage to your critical infrastructure, and then what you can do to maintain the operating capabilities of your critical infrastructure. Inclusion of items that are identified in your risk assessment or your resilience plan in your cost estimate to increase your resilience is needed. You can get up to 10 points for that as well. When looking at sustainability, you can get up to 15 points. There are 3 categories that are being considered under sustainability. There's description here for a technical capacity, managerial capacity, and financial capacity. Under technical capacity, they're looking at the infrastructure of the system and the technical ability of the system personnel to implement and operate the project, and an analysis of the alternatives included but not limited to consolidation. For managerial capacity, it's referring to the management structure of the system, including the ownership, the accountability, staffing, and organization. And for financial capacity, we're looking at the financial resources of the system, including whether or not you have a sufficient revenue stream, creditworthiness, what kind of fiscal controls you have in place, and a financial strategy reflecting the full life cycle costs and adequate revenues to ensure your system is sufficiently funded, maintained, and replaced as needed. In the guidelines, there is some specific information about what you can submit, so I encourage you to go through those. Under ready to proceed, you can get up to 15 points, and for sewer, you can get up to 10 points if you have completed plans and specs, or you can get up to 5 points if you have completed a preliminary engineering report. Remember that those documents need to be uploaded into the portal in order for you to get those points. And finally, you can get up to 15 points in an increased local cost share. Points will be awarded for those applicants that are willing to provide local funds in excess of the 25% match. Here's the ranges for the points. And here is how the match is calculated. Remember that state funds cannot be counted as match when you're making your calculation. Other funds or local, private, and federal funds can be used. This is the equation that we use to calculate the match. You take the amount of other funds used for the project, divide it by the amount of water sector funds that you're requesting, multiply it times 100, and that is your percentage of your local match. Now we're going to go over the section for water. Start with project severity. Again, you can get up to 40 points. They are, again, looking at existing conditions. Remember to include all relevant information and documentation that you want the reviewers to consider. Provide an explanation as to how the proposed improvements will address the existing violations and issues that the system has. Again, make sure that you provide documentation to verify the existing conditions. And remember that a lower score could result due to the submittal or incomplete or inaccurate information. These are some items that will be considered: the compliance with the federal, state, and local law, federal and state laws and regulations, issues that directly or potentially affect public health, secondary contaminants, and inclusion of unserved areas. For consolidation underwater, you can also get up to 20 points. Again, we're looking at consolidating 2 or more systems down to 1. The responsible consolidated system must own, operate, and maintain all other systems post-consolidation. Purchase-only systems or bulk sales systems are not considered an consolidation under this program. You should include a discussion of options for consolidation of the system with neighboring systems in order to result in a more sustainable, resilient system in your application. And any agreements that are in place or that have been executed regarding consolidations with other systems should be uploaded in the application. For resiliency, you can get up to 10 points. Completion of the resilience plan, a risk assessment, and emergency response plan, including local standards or guidelines that can be applied to the water systems, should be completed and uploaded into the portal. There were systems that were required to complete a risk and resilience assessment and develop an emergency response plan due to Section 2013 of the America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. This plan should be uploaded into the portal as well. Inclusion of items that have been identified in the risk assessment and resiliency plan in the cost estimate to increase your resilience. If you have items that are identified in your plan that are needed and then show in your cost estimate, it will help your score there. It's important to note that state sanitary code requires systems have a standby power system. The status of the compliance with this code must be included in your application as well. For sustainability, once again, we're looking at the 3 categories of technical capacity, managerial capacity, and financial capacity. There is a link here to EPA.gov where you can look at resources for capacity development to help you prepare for this. And again, we're looking at the same factors that were discussed under the sewer criteria. For ready to proceed, you can gain up to 15 points. Points will be awarded if agreements such as an engineering agreement between the system and an engineer to conduct the project, consolidation, are executed. Again, please upload those documents into the portal for verification. If you have an engineering report, a system improvement plan, any types of documents like that, upload them into the portal for review. Plans and specs would be another item, so that the reviewers can review them and accurately score your ready to proceed points. Under increased local cost share, again, it's the same ranges as discussed before. We do have up to 15 points that you can earn here, and the calculation is made in the same way as discussed before. Remember that state funds cannot be counted towards your match. Okay, now we're going to move into some other things that we wanted to note so that everyone is aware of what will be expected if your application is funded. Here are the grant conditions and timelines that will be imposed. Award letters should be issued within a month of the JLCB approving awards, and the grant conditions and authorization check for cost letters should be issued within 30 days of the award letters. The deadlines noted on this slide will be in place from the date of your grant conditions letter. For example, if your grant conditions letter is June 1st of 2022, you had a deadline of 2 months, then your deadline would be August 1st of 2022. I recommend that everyone that is applying take this into consideration and be prepared to meet these requirements if you're funded. This is the timeline for the application process. The portal will be open online July 15th to August 31st, and no late applications will be accepted. If you have specific project questions to address to the reviewers, then you must present them before the portal opens. Once the portal opens, the reviewers will not be able to address specific project questions. The working panel will be reviewing applications from September 1st, and we anticipate providing funding recommendations to the Water Sector Commission by October 28th of 2020. All users must obtain a user ID from our office to access the online application portal. Any users that were given access during round 1 still have access to the portal. If you have any issues gaining access to the portal or problems with your user ID, you should email me at tracy.watts@la.gov. The email address is there on the screen. Include your user ID and then let me know what your issue is so that we can work with our technology office to get that resolved. If you don't have access at this point and you would like to do so, you're going to need to complete an access request form and email them to me. Once we're able to process that form and get an ID assigned, then we will send that back to you to the email address identified on the user access form. These are the types of user roles that are in the system. We do have, system access that can be obtained by a system employee, a board member, or an elected official if it is a system that is owned and operated by a local government. You would only have access to the system that you identify on your request, and system users can create, edit, or submit applications in the system. Access can be given to a consultant as well, or an administrative consultant, an engineer, or an architect. Consultant access can be given to multiple systems. An individual form will need to be completed by each system entity in order to gain that access. And consultants will only be able to create and or edit an application. They are not able to submit an application. So it is required that at least one person or user from each system get access so that the application can actually be submitted in the system. This is the user access form. Instructions are included with the form on our website under the Water Sector Program information, and you can also access the form on the portal of the online application portal. The instructions are specific to each section. I suggest that you read them clearly and follow them. If the forms are submitted to me and they're not correct, then I have to return them and request revised forms. This is a screenshot of what the online portal looks like. Throughout the next slides, we're going to go through some screenshots of the portal, and then we're going to go through a brief demonstration of the online portal as well. The website address to access the portal is there on the screen as well. This is what it will look like when you go in to log into the portal. You'll see there's a field for your ID number and then a password. If you previously had a password set up and you have some issues now, you need to email me and let me know. You can also, if you see there on the screen, it says if you have an MID, you can reset or change your password using the Wolf Password Maintenance application. All of you will have an MID assigned to you, so that would be the link that you will use in order to establish your password or change or reset your password. This is what the screen will look like once you go in to start your application. If you're going to be doing a potable water application, you will click Add New Water Application. If you'll be doing a sewer, you will click Add New Sewer Application. This is an overview of what the application screen will look like. We're going to go through each section individually just to discuss them in a little more detail. The top of that section, it is the application information. There you'll choose your system name. It should show based on the type of application that you added. If you click New Sewer or Water Application, you'll identify there for application type. For project category, this is a new field in the system. There's a drop-down box, and you're going to see a list of choices, and you need to choose the one that is most appropriate for your application. If you feel like there is one choice or more than one choice that would be applicable, we ask that you choose the choice that has the most funding in that choice. You'll enter the number of system connections there, and then you'll calculate your population of your system based on the calculation that we discussed previously, which is 3 times your number of active systems, active connections, or census data if applicable. You'll then enter, you see we have 2 columns. This is also a change in the system. We have a grant request column and a total project column. You will be entering those top 4, which you'll enter your total grant request. Then you'll enter how much you're requesting for construction, how much for acquisition, and how much for fees for professional services. And then that total below that is calculated. It should match the total amount that you're entering up at the top. You'll also do that for your total project cost. So again, on the left side, you'll only enter the amount requested under grant funds, and then on the right, you'll enter the total project cost. Under required information and documentation, we've added a link there where you can click and review the guidelines if you need to while you're in the application. We're asking that you include the median income, population growth rate, and unemployment percentage for the area that is impacted by the project. We want you to use data from the parish where the system is located. If the project is located in more than one parish, then we ask that you use the information from the parish where the most population exists. Here you're going to be looking at match and your cost share. So if you're going to be provided an increased local cost share, so you see the question there, is the applicant willing to provide matching funds over 25%? You'll answer yes or no. You will enter your total percentage of your match that you're going to be providing, and you're going to enter the source of the match. If you are using general funds, then you would enter local general funds. If you are using some type of loan funds, then you would need to identify them there. Please be specific as possible. There's a drop down there for match waiver requested where you will choose yes or no. And if you choose yes, that you're going to be requesting a waiver of the match requirement or a reduction of the match requirement, you would also choose yes. Then you would enter any supporting documentation for your request. You could name your document there, and then you will upload it. If your intention is to use water sector program funds to pay for professional service fees, such as engineering or administrative consulting services, you would answer yes or no. If you do have an intention to do that, you would need to upload the items that are listed there. This is so that we can verify that you have conducted your procurement process in compliance with the federal requirements. So we'll ask for the adopted procurement policy that you have in place, documentation of the adoption of the procurement policy, a narrative discussing how you publicize your solicitation. If it was through a newspaper, if you did direct solicitation, put it on your website. Include a narrative that describes all of the ways that you publicized your solicitation. You would need to upload a copy of the solicitation package that was issued when you're working to procure professional services, and the scoring of that submittal as well. Under Ready to Proceed, this is where you would upload any documents that you have available to support that your project is ready to move as quickly as possible. Remember that we mentioned plans and specs, a preliminary engineering report. If you had any type of consolidation agreements, any agreements in place that would enable you to move quicker, that would be the type of documents that you would upload here. We ask that you give us a detailed cost estimate that is prepared, signed, and stamped by a licensed engineer in the state of Louisiana. We want to have detailed information about your project that will be compared to your narrative that you provide to us to make sure that you're including in your cost what you are showing that in your narrative that you're going to be completing. Your amounts on your cost estimate need to coincide with the amounts that you entered back at the top of the application under total grant request and total project costs. We want you to identify what costs will be paid for by water sector program funds and what costs will be paid for by other funds. And all of those numbers should match up when we're comparing them to your information you entered at the top of the application page. And then we have an additional required information. This is a form that you will complete. And for water and sewer projects, there are different forms. There's a link in the portal that I'll show you to both, so you'll choose which one is appropriate to you. And then finally, any supporting documentation that you feel is necessary to make your case and to present your project to the reviewers, you would upload that information here and then provide any comments that are needed. You can see at the bottom of the screen, there are 3 buttons: to save, save and submit, and cancel. I encourage you to save often throughout your process in case the system times out. If it times out, it will not save your information. So I suggest that you work and save the application often throughout your process. This is just an example of the additional information form that's in the portal. This is the one for the water application. There hasn't been a lot of change to this from the first one, maybe just giving a little more specific information that you should submit. You can see that there are instructions on the form, and then the big fields are available for you to type your narratives into. You can type your narratives into a Word document and then copy and paste into the portal. That would be the easiest thing for you to do. And again, make sure that you're saving often. So we're going to be looking at all of the factors that we talked about during the scoring criteria, consolidation, resiliency, project severity, and I would suggest that you answer every question that is provided on the form to assist the reviewers in reviewing your application. This section we provide for sustainability. We give you a place to address each factor, the technical capacity, managerial capacity, and then the financial capacity of the system. Okay, so now we're going to go, I'm going to do a demonstration of the online portal. I'm going to be working in the development portal because that's easier. I don't want to create an application or put information into the production portal that's not needed. So I'm going to be showing you the application in the development portal here. You can see from this front of the screen, I'm going to show you. This, again, is what the front would look like when you go to the website. We do have information here about when the portal will be open. We have links to projects that were awarded in the December meeting and the January meeting previously from round 1. We have documents there that were available for round 1. And then we have our section that talks about round 2. We've linked our guidance document there. We had information here about getting to this webinar. We will link recordings of this webinar here, as well as put up a copy of the slide presentation that we used today. There's a link to items that you need to complete your application for round 2. And then there is a link to the procurement information that we discussed, the webinar that we had regarding how to procure professional services, as well as the link to get to the technical assistance and Q&A sessions that we're holding for the next 2 weeks on the Wednesday. Other documents here we have linked is the water sector portal user access form and the instructions that I discussed below. Discussed previously. I highly recommend that when you complete your access form, you go over those instructions in detail. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. We've linked the final rule for the state and local fiscal recovery funds, the overview of the rule, and then Act 410 of the 2021 regular session, which is when the program was originally created. I'm going to click log in there, and it's going to take me to the screen, and here's where you will enter your MID and your password. Again, if you need to establish a password, you would need to use this Wolf Password Maintenance application to go and do so. I'm going to log in as a user. I previously created an entity in the system that I'm using and I've attached to. If as an entity you manage several systems, so for example, if you have a water system that has several PWS IDs or agency interest numbers, you can submit those attached to your user access request form so that I can add those onto your entity profile, and you would have access to all of those systems to make applications for. You can do one application per system. So that would mean one application per PWS ID or agency interest number. So if I wanted to do a water application, I would click that. Then I have my certain information.
Hey,
Yes.
Can you share your screen, please?
Your screen's not sharing.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's not helpful, huh? Okay, let me go back then, because I'm sorry, I didn't realize y'all weren't seeing it. So this is the login screen here, and this is where you would do the MID and the Wolf Password Maintenance application here. Go back into. So you would click here for adding your application, And then certain information is going to populate from your entity profile that you've created that we take from your user access request form. So the information that you provide to us on your user access form will be entered into that system. And then here, if you would select your PWS ID, because this is a water application. So any PWS IDs that you give to us for your system should show up here in this drop-down box. So I would choose one, and then I would go down, and then here is the new field that I talked about for project category. These are all of the choices that you would use. So for potable water, you obviously would choose drinking water, and for sewer, you would do clean water. If there are some other specific ones that they talk about under water and sewer here, if you felt like those were appropriate. Again, if your project involves treatment, drinking water treatment and transmission and distribution, you should look at your costs and where most of your costs are located and then choose that category. So for this purpose, I'm going to choose treatment. By number of connections, I'm going to say I have 250 connections. And so to do my calculation of my population, I would do 250 times 3, which would be 750. And I would enter that there. So under my grant request, if I wanted to request $1 million, if this is correct, that would be 100,000. Okay, so my total grant request would be $1 million, and so for construction, I'm going to look at doing 600,000. For acquisition, I need, say, 200,000, and then for my fees, I'm going to need 200,000. So you can see that this is calculating down here, and my it matches my total request there. If I'm providing matching funds, then I would enter more funding here under total project costs, because I need to make sure that I'm taking into account all the money that's going in and my match. And when we go and review your application and we review the information that you provide to us about match, we're going to be looking at all of these things to make sure that they all make sense and that they all are correct and match each other. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm not going to do any additional costs, so I'm going to leave that. I would put in my same amount here. Oops. Okay. So this tells me as a reviewer when I'm looking at this that they will be requesting a waiver because they're showing their grant request and their total project costs are equal. So I should know I should have some information down there to support that later in the application. Here is where you can click to go look at the guidelines if you need to check on something while you're in the system. Then I would do my median income for my parish. So I'm just gonna put your number, your population growth rate, and my unemployment percentage. Next, I'm going to go through to my applicant willing to provide funds over 25%. I'm going to say no, because I'm going to be requesting a waiver here. My total maximum local match is 0. I don't have a source of funds there, and I'm going to say match waiver requested, yes. And then I'm going to put a letter from system. And then to upload a document, you will click on choose file, go find that document, and then you would save it here. If you need to attach additional information, then you would click add match waiver documentation, and it will give you the allowance to create another field. If you upload something and you determine that it's in a wrong document or you need to change that, you can click delete, and then when you save it, it will go away. As I said before, I would encourage you to save often, so I would go down here and save. And as you can see, it goes back to the application page, and now I can see that I have an application that was created for water. This is my entity name. It's under round 2. It says period 2. It lists my PWS ID, my region, and it says that it is created. Remember that we cannot consider applications unless they have been submitted. So when you get to your completion of your application and you're ready to submit, you would click save and submit, and it would be reflected under your status as submitted for review. If it still only says created, then it did not save and submit. You need to make sure that you go back and do that. Also, it shows you the last action date, so it tells you the last time when something was done on that application. So I've created my application, I've saved it, I want to go back in and make sure or add some additional information. So I just click on that and it takes me back to what was done. Now, I did not upload a document here under match waiver requested, so that's why there's nothing saved right there. Under the section about will water sector funds be used to pay for professional service fees, since I'm requesting a waiver of the match, and I'm saying that I'm not providing any funds for a match, and I also said up here that I want money, grant requests for fees, then I need to provide this information here. I would say yes, water sector funds are going to be used to pay for professional services. And then I'm going to upload each of these items for the reviewers to consider so that I can have an option of getting my fees paid for with federal funds. If the Water Sector Commission and the JLTV approve the request for a waiver. If I have any documents that I can use for my ready to proceed and to earn points here, then I'm going to put a description of my documents there. So if it was plans and specs, then I would put plans and specs. Then I would choose that file, go find that document, and save it there. If I need to add, additional documents, I can do so here. Click add another. For my cost estimate, I'm going to choose my file, add it, and save it there. And under additional information here, you can see that there's a link for water and a link for sewer. You would click on whichever application you would need to be completing. It will open up that file. You can save it and then upload it. I encourage you again to save as you move through things. And then finally here, you would enter any supporting documentation that you feel is necessary for the application and that will assist the reviewers. You again can add additional documents if you need to as well. You can make any comments that you feel like are needed here, and then you would save, make sure all your documents are there. Remember that you cannot submit anything to the reviewers unless it is requested once you have submitted your application. So I encourage you to review your application and make sure that you have all of the documents in the online portal and correct before you click save and submit. But it'll show a history. You can see that down here about when it was created. Once you submit it, it will also show submitted for review, who did it, and the date and time that it was done. One other thing I wanted to just highlight real quick is that make sure that at least one person from each system has access to submit the application. In round 1, we got down to the wire of the last day, and there were people that had created an application but had never had a user get submit access, and so there were issues with getting that application submitted. Please don't wait till the last minute to do that. It is important that you make sure you have everything in place so that you can submit. We're here to help you as much as possible, but we want to make sure everybody is prepared. So do things early and make sure that you have everything ready. I think we're going to go ahead now and turn it over to questions, if we have questions that we need to discuss.
Tracy, we have a couple in the Q&A that I haven't answered, and then we can look at some of the ones that we did answer. It says, as these are ARPA funds, do they require Davis-Bacon, AIS, or now BABA compliance?
Davis-Bacon is not applicable to the state and local fiscal recovery funds. They do ask that you take into consideration wages and provide prevailing wages, but they have not made Davis-Bacon applicable. Also, NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, is not applicable. And the Buy America Act, as far as I am aware, Treasury has not come out with the requirements and what has to be done for Buy America. I am aware that there was an executive order issued by the president regarding Buy America that made it applicable to all programs funded with federal dollars, but agencies were allowed access to waivers for implementing that, and I have not been told that U.S. Treasury has come out with implementation requirements yet.
Sorry, the next question is, will a privately owned system be eligible to apply for this program? The round 2 guidance states that a sewer system is eligible if the system serves multiple connections and consists of a collection and/or pumping transport system and treatment facility. It also states that the projects would be eligible if they're eligible for the CWSRF. However, to be eligible for that, the project must be publicly owned as required by CWA Section 603. Can you provide clarification, as it's unclear if a privately owned sewer system can apply for this program?
I would say that if you have a specific situation or you're concerned, then you need to email me about that specific situation, and I can confer with, if it's for sewer, DEQ, and if it's for water with LDH. I don't want to provide a generalized answer that may create a problem.
And then we have some questions that that we've answered, but just for everybody to hear if you want to go over those.
Okay.
So the RFP process for professional services is most likely to only apply to entities that receive a waiver, since the previous slide said that the entity is required to pay all engineering fees. So I answered, if an entity is using federal funds, then federal procurement requirements are applicable. And that's for water sector, NEU, CDBG, et cetera. So it's not just for the ones who are requesting a waiver. And then, right. Please advise if webinar participants can receive a copy of this presentation. I said we put the slides up right after on our website. And then the video should be posted by tomorrow. It takes a little bit to download and upload. Will applications not approved in round 1 be automatically considered in this next round, or do those entities have to reapply?
They are required to reapply. Everyone, I'm going to go back to this. Everyone is required to apply. We are not carrying any applications forward from round 1.
If a matching waiver is requested and approved, how does this impact the number of points received in the cost share scoring? So you would not receive any points if you request a waiver.
Right. So if you're requesting a waiver, then you would put that you are providing 0% match. So you wouldn't be given any points for the increased cost share.
Somebody asked, were planning activities considered to be an eligible project? I understand that grantees are required to pay for all engineering fees, but could a project be planning activities for a larger non-water sector project? So no, planning activities only, planning grants only are not eligible. Somebody asked about census data, including population growth rate and unemployment. I've posted a link there and some information that some of our staff gathered for you. So if you're not sure about the population growth and unemployment rate, or if you need information, check the Q&A. And we'll also put that in the FAQs to help with that. And then, can a system have more than one application, one for water and one for sewer?
So remember that your applications are attached to your PWS ID for water and agency interest number for sewer. So your entity could have an application, could have multiple applications, but you would have to attach it to a PWS ID for water and an agency interest number for sewer. So you can have one application per one of those numbers.
So someone asked about the process. Can you describe the waiver process for the project funding cap, like going above the $5 million cap?
If you have your total project costs are $7 million and the cap is $5 million, then you would put in the request for the total project cost if that's what you're wanting to do, and not use the match funds to cover those costs. And then the Water Sector Commission and the JLCB would have to determine if they wanted to approve above the $5 million cap, or if they wanted to only approve up to the $5 million cap and expect the applicant to come up with the additional funds.
Do new user access forms need to be created and submitted for applicants who want to reapply for round 2 funding? So I assume they applied for round 1.
Now, if you gained access to the portal in round 1, you already have access to the portal. You do not need to request access again. I would just like to note that user IDs are issued to a person. You should not share your user ID. If you have additional staff that now need access, you need to request user access for those staff members. You should only be using the user ID that was given to you individually.
Can projects be combined with CWSRF projects or with DWSRF projects?
We would have the same requirements in place as before, that in order to use those funds as match, you need to have your loan closed whenever you make that application.
So I'm not sure about this one, Tracy, so they said, I thought that stormwater wasn't an option for round 2. And I said, yes, drainage is not eligible. She said the project categories has an option for clean water, stormwater, so it's extremely confusing.
So under eligible activities, stormwater is listed. According to DEQ, stormwater is part of sewer systems, and so that we left that there. If you're referring to the options that were included in the actual online portal where you choose your project description, those options are copied from the reporting information that we have to give to the federal government. And so there may be options on there that are not applicable to you. Again, you need to look at what is most applicable to you, and that's the one you would choose.
And then someone asked about the deadline to submit the design, like if it gets awarded, is 6 months. But what if it requires extensive surveying and it just cannot be completed? It's not feasible to be completed within that time period.
So with round one, we have had some applicants request extensions to deadlines. Some have requested extensions to the deadline to submit plans and specifications. Any extension requests have to be reviewed and approved by the Water Sector Commission. That would be up to them. You would have to make a request to get an extension, explain why you need that extension, and then it would be up to the commission whether or not they would make that approval. One thing that you might could consider, and some grantees did, is you may be able to break it up into phases so that you could have some plans ready within the 6 months, and then maybe the additional plans ready within 2 or 3 or 4 months after that. But you could provide that request to the commission to consider.
I think that's it, Tracy. Someone
Okay,
did
so
ask,
this
is it 5 million for each, how did they say it? If an entity has water and sewer project, is it 5 million for each or 5 million total? And it's 5 million for each. So for each system.
For each system, and remember, system means PWS ID number, agency interest number. So if your entity, so let's say, you know, my fictitious town is Sunnyside. If Sunnyside has 3 PWS ID numbers for their water system, then I can get $5 million for each one of my PWS ID numbers. I can make that application. There's just a couple more slides I wanted to go through in the system. One here, there's some resources for you. There is our website address that you can click on to go to information about the water sector program. Here is the website address for the U.S. Treasury state and local fiscal recovery funds. And then this is the address for the online portal application so that you can get to the portal. Remember that if you have any other questions after today, you can submit them in writing to wspinfo@la.gov, and we will be posting FAQs and updating them as needed. Here is some contact information if you need to contact us for information. There's mine, there's Heather Paul, who you've been hearing on the webinar as well. We have 2 staff members in our office that are working on the water sector program, Gwen Scott and Christy Crone. Their email is here and their phone numbers. For LDH, Amanda Ames and Blake Fogelman are working on the project, on the program, and then Jonathan McFarland and DEQ. There's their contact information. Remember that if you need to reach out and ask questions, now's the time to do so. Once the portal opens, they won't be able to answer specific project questions to you. Our office has a Facebook page. We encourage you all to follow it. We do post reminders and notifications of information on the Facebook pages about the water sector program, as well as all the programs that we administer. So it's the fastest, easiest way for you to get that information. And we thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to working with you and getting your applications. So y'all have a good day, and see you later.